Battled Ukrainian cities are now underway along so-called safe corridors.
This as the UN officials are saying more than 2 million Ukrainians have fled their houses now. They're desperately seeking safety for their families.
Meanwhile, Russian shells have stopped multiple attempts to evacuate civilians as the deadly Russian invasion enters day 13. And a defiant president says he's not going anywhere. We start our coverage on this Tuesday morning with Trey Yanks, who is on the ground in Kyiv, where it is very early in the afternoon, 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, Trey in Kyiv.
Yeah, guys, good morning. We have some disturbing news from northern Ukraine in the city of Sumy, where a reported Russian airstrike overnight killed at least 20 people, including multiple children. Rescuers are still digging through the debris at this hour, looking for survivors from this strike, but it gives you a sense of the type of devastation the people of Ukraine are facing. It comes as people are trying to get out of the city. Many people evacuating today, and it's not just there, it's across this country as the Russian invasion continues. But as you mentioned, a defiant Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying last night he's not planning to leave. Take a listen.
Here is Kyiv in the evening. I stay here in Kyiv at Bankova Street. I don't hide and I'm not afraid of anyone. I will stay here as long as it's necessary to win in our patriotic war.
Just outside the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv sits a town of Irpin. In this town, there's about 60,000 people, and we were there 2 times over the weekend to see the destruction these people are facing. 4 people were killed there on Sunday in a Russian shelling. But take a look at what the scene was like just yesterday as people tried to get out of harm's way.
There's a large group of civilians now fleeing the city of Irpin. They're holding a white flag to let the Russians know they are not a threat, and they're simply trying to get out of the city.
It was like your life is broken forever, and you have no hope.
Evgenia Antonenko has been walking for miles. She tells us she tried to shield the eyes of her young daughter as they passed bodies in the war-torn streets of Irpin.
I will tell that the war, it's a disaster, and it's dies many there in our town. Many die people just like on the street.
In the distance, Ukrainian soldiers crouch down, worried about Russian snipers and shelling. They tell fleeing civilians to hurry and stay low. The evacuation for these people has become much more difficult as the Russians fire mortar shells at this position.
I live in the complex over there, in the another end of the city Irpin. They destroyed everything.
Yesterday, 4 people were killed as they left this suburb of Kyiv. Residents say Russian troops pushed forward overnight and drove tanks through the streets.
They told us to go because there is a war, and when we started to go, we saw that near our houses was 3 tanks.
Russia says they aren't targeting civilian areas, though today the sounds of war pierce the air of this town.
You know, as we're preparing for these reports, we do a lot of background research on these towns and cities across Ukraine, and it's really just sad to see what they looked like just a few months ago, restaurants and culture and music, and today they are consumed by war. Back to you.
They are indeed.
Yeah,
Trey,
but still holding on.
Trey, I noticed that you talked to a number of those people under a bridge. For a lot of people in Ukraine who are on the move, under a bridge is about the safest place you can be when you're out in the open.
Yeah, absolutely. While we were talking to those people, the Russians were firing mortar shells at the location. They weren't trying to hit soldiers around there. They were firing indiscriminately. And as you saw in that piece, 4 people were killed very close to where we were standing just the day before. This is the type of situation that people across the country are dealing with. It's not just shelling. It's cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, sniper fire. And remember, the Ukrainians, they're the ones who were invaded. And now they're simply trying to get away. Those who are staying and pledging to fight are picking up arms. They're asking the West for any equipment they can get, and they're preparing for battle.
Trey, the family, there was a family that was killed. Are those the 4 that you're talking about, the mom, dad, and the 2 kids?
Yeah, we understand it was a mother, 2 kids, and then some sort of acquaintance that was with them trying to get out of this city of Irpin. And we were there the day before, and we saw this area. We actually talked to the former Ukrainian president nearly at the exact spot that the shell hit. And then the next day, these people are killed We got there the following day, and there was blood still soaking the ground of this Ukrainian city.
Trey, what about Zelensky's decision to stay, tell everybody exactly where he is, do a tour of his headquarters, do network TV yesterday? Today he's going to be addressing the UK Parliament. What about that decision? You probably know exactly where he is, which means Russians know exactly where he is.
Yeah, look, it was brave to openly say where he's located in a city that has been targeted with cruise and ballistic missiles. We met with Zelensky last week, and the process to get to that meeting was very top secret. We got a last-minute location, and we had to go to a checkpoint. We got out of our car, and then we were quickly ushered into waiting vans and then taken to a location where the president was. And then yesterday, he was quite open about where he's located. So he's really telling the Russians he's not afraid, and he's going to stay here and fight, but he is risking his life by doing so. Make no mistake about that. The Russians are trying to kill him. There are credible reports of hit squads trying to come into this capital city and take out the Ukrainian president. And it's part of the reason you saw reports over the weekend indicating the United States and others are already looking at who could replace him if he is killed or captured. Obviously, that is a worst-case scenario for the Ukrainian people, but it's a very real scenario amid war.
Sure, absolutely. And because we didn't show the whole video of where he walks into his office, you can see he's holding selfie-style the camera. You know exactly where he's at. What it speaks to is not only is he saying, I'm not afraid of you, Vladimir Putin, but also he's speaking, Trey, to the fact that their air defenses are still intact. So he must feel confident because I know they're in Ukraine today. Ukraine officials claim that they have downed 3 Russian jets just today and a cruise missile. So they're obviously their air defenses are intact. They can take stuff out of the sky.
Yeah, the Ukrainians have been pretty successful in shooting down planes and helicopters. We saw that report indicating that officials here believe they were able to shoot down 3 planes last night. We heard the air defense in the distance. This is very close to the capital of Kyiv. They have been really trying to fire as much as they can to get these planes out of the sky that are bombing different parts of this city and this country. It's one of the key things the Ukrainians are asking for from the West, air defense systems. They say if they can control the sky, they're going to be able to hold their own on the ground. But remember, there's a whole debate going on right now about the possibility of a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Right. Officials in the West, specifically the United States, have said this could be a disaster in dragging other countries to this already expanding conflict. But Ukrainian President Zelensky says if a no-fly zone is not implemented over his country, scores of civilians will die in this war.
All right, Trey, thank you so much. Zelensky yesterday said that he's asking Americans for help. He talked to President Biden. He said that he thinks that Biden can do more, and he's pleading for security in the sky. You have some Americans that are saying, why don't we just help? Why don't we send our fighter jets over there? They need more help in the sky. Mark Levin speaks to that point.
Biden is a disaster. He's weak. He's not doing the things that are needed for the Ukrainians to win. And this is what's bothering me. Why is it that the Ukrainians have to lose? They want MiG-29s. That's what their pilots are used to flying. We and our allies can give them MiG-29s. They want some F-16s that they've flown. It's our oldest jet, but our most ubiquitous. We should give them some F-16s to fly. We don't have to be in charge of any no-fly zone. We don't have to send American troops into Ukraine. And why do people think that this coward, Putin, who's hiding now in some bunker, is going to use nuclear weapons? I don't get that. If he was going to use nuclear weapons, he doesn't need us to provoke them. He can use nuclear weapons tomorrow. He can use whatever he wants tomorrow, but he hasn't, and he's not going to. First and foremost, because they don't want to die. They want power.
And here's the thing with the F-20, the MiGs. They evidently some problem with it now because we have to find the F-16s to replace the Polish Air Force with, which they've ordered F-33s or F-35s that are coming next year, but we could just park them there and do that. And now they're saying, well, we're a little worried about getting the MiGs because there's so many airfields that are blown up, we don't know where we would put them. Can you just give them to them, please, and stop worrying about, if you're not going to give them a no-fly zone, you're not going to give them missile defense, at least let them use their pilots to pilot planes that are 20 years old to protect themselves against Russian invasion. And also, there was a deal offered yesterday, which no one agrees to anything, no one believes anything they say. They say if the Russian terror would, if they would just recognize the Ukrainians, the 2 breakaway regions in the Donbass area, as well as Crimea, if you would just recognize that, and the Ukrainian military would stop shooting at us, Dmitry Peskov says, we would end this thing right away. No, you can't just cut up a country and then keep it, invade it, and then decide when it's over.
Right. To the point about how we are assisting them, we understand that at what they're referring to as a secret airfield near the border, 17 flights of weapons are arriving each day. The West so far has sent in 17,000 anti-tank missiles. The Pentagon says a majority of the $350 million in aid promised is on the ground there. Now, there's one problem, though. Senior U.S. officials told ABC News they're worried that Russia might actually attack the supply chain that goes to Ukraine, which is currently in Poland. It sounds like they are anticipating some sort of an airstrike, and so
in
that
Poland?
is, yeah, in Poland by the Russians.
Then NATO would get involved.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one thing regarding the Russians, there was an extraordinary bit of video I just saw that is being broadcast in Ukraine, and they've got a Russian commander who was captured, and he was explaining in this TV statement what the Russians were told as they came into the invasion. And what they were told is that Kyiv had been overthrown by Nazis and needed liberating. And so that's why on the first day, when Vladimir Putin says he's going to be involved in the denazification of Ukraine, we said, what does that mean? That was his public statement so that those 200,000 people on the northern border would have the go sign. The town's full of Nazis. Let's go liberate them.
He said that publicly. It was farcical when he said it. Everyone said, what are you talking about? And Zelensky answered, I'm Jewish. Really? I'm a Nazi now?
Right. But what the point is that is what they believe. The people in the tanks.
That was the message.
Right, exactly. The town is full of Nazis.
Yeah, well, Vladimir Putin controls state-run media. He tells them what to say. If they don't say what he wants them to say, then he shuts down the network and throws those people in jail, and Lord knows whatever else he does to these individuals. But they go over there, and we keep hearing from these soldiers that are Russian, that are tied up with their hands behind their back, saying, we thought we were going on a training mission. We thought this was a peace mission. We thought we were coming to save the Ukrainians from these Nazis that invaded their towns. You had one guy who was text messaging with his mom. We heard that exchange right before he died, saying she thought he was on a training mission in Crimea. Turns out he was there fighting Ukrainians, and he ended up dying. But he said, Mom, I didn't know that this was what I was going in for.
147 Russian cities had protests. 13,000 have been arrested. Evidently, the moms are starting to get together, and they're famously the ones, when their outrage got too much, famously that's why they left Afghanistan. They're accusing Putin of using their sons as cannon fodder in the Ukraine. And what the Russians have done is leave the bodies on the battlefield. So the moms are actually calling into the Ukraine, who set up a hotline for Russian and Ukrainian soldiers to try to find out if their kid is alive still, because the Russians obviously don't care about their own people. They don't care about the Ukrainian people. They're shooting children, in fact, targeting them. So, and when they get frustrated, they get even more irresponsible and just wildly just bombing cities. And that's what everyone's worry is. But the good news is that the world is outraged by this action, and slowly but surely is isolating them economically, which brings us to the other big story, and that is oil.
Yeah, we used to be energy independent. Now we are dependent on countries like Russia. So we are funding this in a sense. Not only are we helping Ukraine, but we're also lining the pockets of Vladimir Putin, giving him so much money, making him wealthy. And we're funding what he's doing to these Ukrainians in a sense, because we shut down, Joe Biden, day one, shuts down the KEYSTONE pipeline, makes us dependent on Russia now for oil. You're going to the gas tank in California, and it's costing you over $7 a gallon, $100 to fill up your car. What teenager, what 20-year-old, what average American can afford that?
Absolutely. And when you look at the price of gas, by the way, it went up 11 cents overnight. A year ago, you were paying $2.77 a gallon. A month ago, $3.46. A week ago, $3.62. And today, $4.17. During the first week of the invasion, according to Yardeni Research, gas jumped 41 cents. And they are now estimating that given the jump in gas, the average family watching right now will pay $2,000 a year more just in gas prices and $1,000 more given inflation with groceries. In other words, $3,000 is coming out of your pocket every year because of the high prices. And that is going to, that's going to ripple across the country as people are waking up and they're going, first of all, the problem is that people are cutting back on driving. They're watching their spending, and that poses a threat to the pandemic recovery. And
but don't blame Russia for that. We have not felt the impact of cutting back Russian oil because we haven't cut back Russian oil. We're 7% of our imports come from Russia. I got it. But we are their #1 customer, which is more important. The bigger problem is if we want to isolate and really have Russian people and the Russian government feel the pain, is we gotta sanction the banks financing all energy operations, and we have to stop importing Russian oil. The Germans said that's a no-go. We're getting about 80% of our oil and gas from there. We're not going to do it. Bulgaria, Austria, the Netherlands, same thing. Finland, Latvia, Slovakia, and Hungary get 100% of their oil and gas from Russia. Yeah. So they're going to put themselves under extreme strain if they do this. But you don't have to tell an Eastern European country the danger of Russia expansion. You look at Kaliningrad and that weapons depot there and how quickly they could take back Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, the Baltic nations overall. So the question is, if we want to do the right thing and at least sleep at night knowing that we're not going to be spending for 600 million barrels of oil a day, 600,000 barrels of oil a day from Russia, we got to get it from somewhere else. And believe it or not, the administration is trying to rationalize to the American people going to Iran and Venezuela, meeting with a country we don't even recognize the leader as the true leader of that communist, Marxist, oppressive regime. So they got to get it somewhere. Their idea is to go to evil incarnate, Iran and Venezuela. What an insult.
Well, and what are we doing with Iran right now? It sounds like we're reopening the nuke deal. So that would be, okay, Iran, give us some more oil, and we will give you your deal. And then they're also dealing with Saudi Arabia. And what happened in the last couple of days?
In Venezuela.
Well, yeah, I don't know what the deal is with Venezuela, but I know the deal with Saudi Arabia was we released back to Saudi Arabia from Gitmo the so-called 20th hijacker. Coincidence? Yeah, probably. But nonetheless, there was a great headline in the Daily Mail yesterday. And it said that the administration would rather deal with terrorists than Texans. Peter Doocy, the White House correspondent, was asking, hey, Jen Psaki, why exactly has the administration taken this policy, given the prices are through the roof? Here's the interchange. Watch this.
Would President Biden ever undo his executive order that stopped the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline?
Are you suggesting that would solve the gas prices issue? Well,
do you think that that would maybe affect prices faster than getting the whole country off of fossil fuels?
I actually don't think it would. The Keystone was not an oil field. It's a pipeline. Yeah. Also, the oil is continuing to flow in just through other means. So it actually would have nothing to do with the current supply imbalance.
So you say that you're going to do everything that you can to reduce the impact that high gas prices have on Americans. We're asking other countries to think about maybe pumping more oil. Why not just do it here?
Well, to be very clear, federal policies are not limiting the supplies of oil and gas. Let me finish. Let me finish.
An executive order his
Peter,
first week that halted new oil and gas.
Let me give you the facts here, and I know that can be inconvenient. We are one of the largest producers with a strong domestic oil and gas industry. We have actually produced more oil. It is at record numbers, and we will continue to produce more oil. There are 9,000 approved drilling permits that are not being used.
Okay. So she goes on to blame the Ukraine invasion for the high gas prices. Let me remind her, the Ukraine invasion started 13 days ago. Right. Gas prices have been going up for the last year.
Right. We just put up the graphic.
Yeah, a year ago, $2.77 a gallon. Today, $4.17 a gallon. $7 out in California. And get this. Keystone Pipeline would have provided 830,000 barrels per day. Guess how much we buy from Russia? 670,000 barrels per day. Keystone alone would have given the United States 160,000 more barrels a day than we buy from Russia.
So you go to North Dakota, you go to Texas, you frack more. It won't be an instant answer. The frackers say, we just can't ramp this up immediately, especially they have some supply chain issues. But if they knew things were coming down the line, that would also affect the oil market. And some experts have said this could go up to $200 per barrel this month, which is unbelievable. But in terms of the experts, the people that do this for a living, they get the ratchet set out and make pipelines, the one that spend the money, get the financing to take the risk, to drill in those lands and know what it takes to get the permits and know how hard it is. Here's a little of their answer to Jen Psaki.
This represents a fundamental misunderstanding as to how this process works. First, you have to actually discover whether actually there is oil and gas in that land. The White House certainly doesn't have their facts straight on this.
That accusation is a complete red herring, and it's really a distraction from the fact that this administration has paused leasing on federal lands. These leases take many years to explore, to develop, and to produce on.
Some permits are viable and some are not, but right now the moratorium on leasing certainly just adds an additional block to American energy production. We need to stop the rhetoric that's anti-fossil fuel, and we need some clarity kind of in the regulatory sense that this administration is behind domestic production of energy.
Something else, they're pressuring the banks and high finance companies to leave the mutual funds, to not put energy stocks in people's portfolios because of pressure from green groups, environmental groups, and the current government. How bad is that? So here we are in a free market to maximize profits, and they say, well, you can do that in anything, but I don't want you spending on fossil fuels. How dare you? These are American companies in many cases.
And they say buy an electric car. They start at like $60,000. Yes, they're cool. You have to plug them in. You don't have to go to the gas tank. But most families, not only can't you can't get them right now, you can't get a car right now, not even a used car, but they're expensive.
And fuel by coal.
Right, exactly. Now, going back to those experts talking a little bit about how disingenuous the answers from the administration are, keep in mind, the administration probably would like us to be paying $10 a gallon so that people would drive cars less. It's all part of their very ambitious climate change and global warming policy. Right. And so what Peter was talking about and what those people were talking about in that montage, the Biden administration on day one did something. His first day, Joe Biden jacked up the climate cost estimate. During the Trump years, it was $7 per ton, and Biden jacked it up to $51 per ton of carbon dioxide emissions. Well, recently, in the month of February, a Louisiana federal judge sided with a group of Republican-led states. The judge said the president did not have that authority to change that particular rule. It violated federal law, and so now the Biden administration is delaying decisions on new oil and gas leases. Oh, thank you very much, Siri.
So here is Senator Dan.
Just one other thing I'd like to say, and that is that going forward, it sounds like there's an item in Politico this morning that says that Exxon's going to step up and try to drill 100,000 more barrels a day, but that's going to take a year.
Right. Here's Senator Dan Sullivan from an oil state of Alaska, where they cannot drill in Anwar and elsewhere.
They're waiting on an A-OK from this administration.
It was, believe it or not, it was in the Trump tax reform bill that passed. Listen.
Yeah, it's not truthful, right? And it's not truthful at all. From day one, this administration has been hell-bent with their anti-American energy holy war to shut down the production of American energy. She knows that, right? It's delaying leases. Look, you can get a lease and then they delay the permits for you to be able to do seismic and do work on it. In Alaska, they delay the ability to get a permit for an ice road, which is how we go and do exploration on these leases. So day one, they have been focused on killing the production of American energy, and the White House press secretary is not telling the truth.
And had Joe Biden not pulled the plug on Keystone the first day, we would be over 1 year closer to it being completed.
Right. A White House press secretary not telling the truth by a guy from an oil state that knows the reality of drilling it. And I imagine Jen Psaki
Well, there was
doesn't.
that poll, support on ban on Russian oil. 71% said yes. Quinnipiac University. That's Republicans, that's Democrats, that's independents.
Even if it means higher gas prices, American people, 7 out of every 10 American, according to Quinnipiac, would be for paying more money in gas to not have Russia blood oil on their hands.
Yeah, but
for some reason, Joe Biden's dragging his feet.
And something that Jen Psaki repeatedly said yesterday was there are 9,000 unused gas leases. Kept on saying that to Peter Doocy.
That's what Dan Sullivan was saying. It's false.
And the reason that these companies aren't drilling on that federal land is because they feel like they can't build the pipelines. Because the oil and gas industry is caught up in so much regulation right now that there's no point for them to start a project when they know the Biden administration is just going to shut them down.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we have 3 more years with him.
That's the response to what Jen Psaki repeatedly kept on saying.
And the only thing we could do is just tell the true story and let the American people decide.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we got to turn to some headlines now, starting with this, something that, Steve, you just mentioned. A Guantanamo Bay prisoner suspected. Yes, Todd.
Ainsley, good morning. As the Russian invasion of Ukraine continues, police continue arresting thousands of anti-war demonstrators. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began on February 24th, at least 13,000 people have been arrested for protesting the war in Russia. Over the weekend, President Vladimir Putin signing a law that makes it illegal for journalists and news organizations to publish anti-war content. And those who violate the law face up to 15 years in prison. As the Russian people continue speaking out against the war, a journalist who recently left the state-run network Russia Today offering a grim assessment of the war's future. Maria Baranova telling Fox News Digital, quote, "I know these people very well. They never send threats. They just kill. So there is kind of a weird silence around me, but I really think we're on the brink of a nuclear war right now. I'm not exaggerating." As Western sanctions begin to take hold, many Russian people are fleeing that country. The sanctions leading to closed borders, food rationing, and the very real possibility of Russia's banking system collapsing within days. Ainsley.
All right. Thank you so much, Todd. Well, there's an amazing family down in Texas. They're raising thousands of dollars for their Ukrainian exchange student whose family is trapped in Kyiv. Anya, mom, and sister fled the war-torn country this month while her dad stayed behind. And now her host family has raised more than $25,000 to help them all reunite in Poland. Anya joins us now along with her host family, Nicole, Brian, Samantha, and Rachel Boniface. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, Anya, I understand you joined the family. You're an exchange student down in Texas back in December, but your family in Ukraine, many of them have left and are now in Germany. What about the family that's left behind in Ukraine? How are they doing?
They're hiding in the shelters.
They're hiding.
And we don't really, yes, ma'am.
Who is there? Who's back in Ukraine and who was able to get out?
There's my friends and my cousins are there. My family were able to get out, and some of my friends also leave Ukraine.
Okay, and Nicole, you're amazing. You are raising so much money to help her family. What is the goal?
So our goal started out, we just got this outpouring from our friends and family asking what they could do to raise some money to help her family since they left their jobs, they left their home, and we just got that started to give them some peace of mind that they won't have the financial burden of trying to find jobs right away wherever they end up.
And Brian, when this war broke out, when Russia invaded Ukraine 13 days ago, what was your reaction knowing that you have this beautiful young lady from Ukraine living in your house?
Absolutely, we were very concerned. We didn't know what the future would hold. Obviously, you know, she was scheduled to go back in June, but that's not going to happen anymore with the 18-month extension that they've been given. But real concern for her family, their safety, their welfare, and for the people of Ukraine.
I know that there are student visa, there are different types of visas you can get. She's an exchange student. How is America working with your family to not send her back there in June?
Well, we're still waiting on some answers. We've reached out to Senator Cruz's office and also Congressman Brady, our congressman, and they're waiting for direction from the State Department on what our options are. So we're following up closely with them and making sure that we have all the options available so that Anya has the best chance that she can have, and same with her family coming over.
Able to come over. Samantha and Rachel, I know y'all are in high school.
So are we.
Anya goes to school with you. Your school got together and y'all had a Stand with Ukraine Day. Tell us about that. Samantha, I'll start with you.
It was really great to see like the whole school rally behind Ukraine and Anya, and it was great to show our support and help her out.
Rachel, how about for you? What was that experience like?
It was really great because being in junior high and seeing all the people just show their support for Ukraine and just show that they're really backing up for them. It was amazing.
Anya, so many Americans are sending money over to your country. We're very concerned for your loved ones and all of the people of Ukraine. How do you, what's your reaction to how Americans are really rallying around you and your family and your country?
I'm so appreciative, and it became so warm inside my heart. And I just want to say that you give me strength and motivation to go forward. And thank you very much. I'm so appreciative this.
Oh, so sweet of you. I know the family that you're with, they said you've become part of their family, and I hope they get your parents and your grandmother and all of your relatives back here to America, or here to America, so they can be with you. Y'all have raised, your goal is $30,000. You raised $10,000 in 24 hours. That's awesome. You now have $24,000, and for anyone watching Fox and Friends, if you want to help Anya and her family in these efforts to bring them to America, you can donate at foxandfriends.com. God bless you, Boniface family, and to you too, Anna. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.
you.
Playing